Welcome back to Zach's in the Shop. I had a commenter a week or two ago suggest that I test out the brand new Hyper Tough 4-volt ratchet. I was intrigued by this ratchet. I don't know how powerful they would be. That's one of the reasons why I never had the USB ratchet from Ryobi, because I thought it would just be kind of a gimmicky thing. But I was intrigued by it. It's only $29, so I picked it up, and I picked up the Ryobi. So in this video, we're going to be testing out the Hyper Tough and comparing it with this Ryobi to see which one is better. Is the more expensive better? Interchangeable batteries? Old cheapy? Let's find out. Since these tools are pretty small compared to what I usually test, I got out the baby scale here and I got it set to grams, and we're going to compare the weights of the two tools. Our Hyper Tough is 563 grams, and since the Hyper Tough has an internal battery inside of it, we'll be weighing the Ryobi with a battery as well. This is a 2 amp hour USB battery. Ryobi has a growing line of USB tools, including a glue pen, inflator, I believe. There's several different ones. We'll probably test them again in the future. Easy to install. And the Ryobi is 574 grams. So relatively close. And just for reference, that's 1.265 pounds. Since with any ratchet the head size is a big factor, we're going to measure that as well. The Ryobi comes in at just at 30 millimeters across and about 28 millimeters deep. The Hyper Tough is about the same at 30 millimeters across, and because the switch on top to go from forward to reverse is exposed, the Hyper Tough is about 34 deep. Both of the tools have switches that will lock them, so the triggers can't be depressed by accident. Once the battery is installed, the Ryobi does not have a battery gauge. The Hyper Tough does right here on the side, which you can see for a second or so after the button is pressed. The Ryobi is 10.5 inches long. The Hyper Tough is 9.5 inches long. It's important to know how thick these things are at the handle. The circumference of the Hyper Tough is about 5 1/8 inches. The circumference of the Ryobi is right at 5 1/8 inches as well. Now I'm going to measure RPM with this Syntex 66632. In the next test, I'm using this crane scale to see how powerful these ratchets are. Basically, I'll take our ratchet, we're going to tighten up this screw, it'll pull the eye bolt up, stretch this crane scale, and cause that weight to go higher and higher. Now, how much weight gets built up is basically how much power these ratchets have. We'll start off using the Hyper Tough, and we'll do 3 runs to see how consistent they are. Our first run. About 96 pounds there. Right at 100 pounds. Way down to 74. I'm gonna do one more in case that was an anomaly. Looks like it was. 90, we'll call it 94. Here's our first run. Right at 86. Down to 66. At 69. 89. So the highest run was the last one. We're now going to try the Ryobi with a 3 amp hour battery. Got up to 88. All the way up to 95. At around 79. down to 65. Let's see.
There's two little things about this graph right here. First of all, I added the Ryobi 3 amp hour battery, just chiefly because it was a power test and I wanted to see the difference. I did not include it on most of these tests, but I was curious about how much power it was going to give the Ryobi. And it did seem like it gave it a little bit of a boost in power. The Ryobi came in at 82 on average. The Ryobi 3 amp hour was 88 on average. And the HyperTough was 98 on average. Now, I will say that I dropped the lowest score just to make sure we didn't have an oddball reading that messed up the test.
In the next test, I have an assortment of nuts here that I'm going to thread down with the ratchets and then take them off and see how quickly it can thread all these nuts, then take them all off, and just get a sense of which ratchet will be faster if you have to do repetitive work. We're going to start with the HyperTough. It's fully charged. 1, 2. The HyperTough still has a full charge. Now I have the Ryobi version. We have the 2 amp hour battery. Let's see how well it can do. 1, 2. The Ryobi needed a fair amount of help during that test, especially breaking those free. I'm going to screw a couple down with the Ryobi here and see if the HyperTough can break them free in order to ascertain whether or not the Ryobi is just getting them stuck on harder, basically. All right, I'm going to tighten them down with the Ryobi. All right, let me see if the HyperTough will break those free. All right, let's try the first one here. No problem with the first one. Let's try the second one. Oh, let me try again. So it looks like to me the HyperTough is a little bit more powerful once we take into account its ability to break a few free that the Ryobi can't quite get done.
If we compare our speed run times, you see the Ryobi was a little bit longer than the HyperTough. Ryobi at 231 seconds, HyperTough at 211 seconds. A lot of that was just a slight deficiency in power from the Ryobi. The Ryobi was just a little bit slower and it needed a little bit more help loosening those nuts during the backside of that run.
When it comes to charging these two, the Ryobi, the battery unscrews, and they do sell a charger that you can get that is probably a fast charger. I'm not too familiar with it, but you can also just plug a USB-C cord into the battery itself. We're going to plug it in. See, it starts flashing, and let's go over and see how quick it's going to charge. According to our little USB tester, we have 5 volts going in. It's charging at 1.2 amps. It's a lot better than a lot of stuff that I have here, but not the best either. As for the HyperTough, it has a USB-C connection right on the end, so we'll go ahead and plug that in. The lights do flash as it's charging. You can see it's pretty much depleted because I ran it for a long time so I could charge it. It's fluctuating between just below an amp, kind of erratic, fluctuating between below an amp and right at an amp while it's charging. Pretty dead. I'm gonna start charging them back. They're not hot or anything like that. And then we can see how much battery is actually in this battery. First, gotta plug in our tester over here. Let's do the Ryobi battery first. The Ryobi battery is finished charging. It took almost 2 hours and charged 1,897 milliamp hours, which is almost 2,000 milliamp hours. So the HyperTough is done charging now, and it looks like we have 1,848 milliamp hours at an hour and 50 minutes. Both the batteries ended up in the same ballpark. All right, let's see how this whole thing breaks down. The HyperTough model number is 80043. The Ryobi is FVRC50K. They're both 4 volts nominal. The weight is so close that the score is almost the exact same. 563 grams compared to the Ryobi's 574. The HyperTough's a little bit lighter. I didn't weigh that score very much, no pun intended. I divided it by 4 because I thought it was a less important score than some of the other power and speed runs. The head dimension total, which is basically the width of the head plus the depth. The HyperTough's a little bit bigger than the Ryobi, so it gets a little bit of a ding in the score. 90 compared to 100, because the HyperTough is 64 millimeters total, and the Ryobi was 58. The speed run time in seconds for the HyperTough was 211, which gave it 100 in the score, and 231 for Ryobi, which knocks it down to a 91, which is basically 91% of the speed of the HyperTough. The crane test score was 100 for the HyperTough because it averaged 98. Again, we omitted that lower reading compared to the 2 amp hour Ryobi, which is what we're scoring here because it comes in a kit with a 2 amp hour battery. 82, which gives it a score of 84. In the RPM category is again really close. I didn't weigh the scores heavily as some of the other ones. It's cut in half. An RPM of 206 gives the HyperTough a 49 score, and 212 gives the Ryobi a 50. I cut the price score in half as well because I want performance to mean more than price, but I still want price to be a factor. So the price of the Ryobi is $70, which gives it a score of 21. And it's low because the HyperTough is just so cheap. It's $30, which gives it a score of 50, which really helps it out in the scoring. That means the total is 414 for the HyperTough and 370 for the Ryobi. Even though the Ryobi has a few features that aren't weighed into this particular scoring, like the ability to use the batteries for multiple different tools, an ever-growing platform, the HyperTough has an internal battery, so if something goes wrong with that battery, you have to open it up to fix it, or more likely chuck it at a wall, because it's only $29 and go buy another one, which is something to consider if you're going to buy one of these ratchets. If you might like some of the other USB Ryobi tools, there's a lot of them coming out. You may want to invest in the USB ratchet from Ryobi. But according to this, not counting all that other stuff, the HyperTough is technically a better score than Ryobi. I want to know what you guys think about that, because, that's going to be something that I would think people would want to disagree with, because it's HyperTough. Even though it's Ryobi, it's a, quote, prosumer brand, whatever that means. HyperTough is not even prosumer. It's below-sumer. So what do you think? Let me know in the comments. Give the video a like, all that other stuff. Whatever you want to do, subscribe. And God bless all of you. And I'll see you on the next one with this little hint of what's to come.